Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about a book from one of my favorite authors. And this is his first full-length novel. And just like in his novellas and short stories, this one just deals with subject matters in such a way that you can't help feel but all your things when you're reading it. This is fantastic. It's truly scary and it's beautifully written. But first, as always, I want to remind you that I have books for sale. And if you want to purchase any of the books you see on your screen, there is a link down below in the description. All right, let's get started. Eric Larocca is one of my favorite upcoming authors. I mean, he has established himself in the short form storytelling with his novellas and short story collections. I have yet to read something by him that didn't affect me in some way. And this is his first foray into a full-length novel territory, and it is just as effective, just as scary, just as good as any of his other works. This is called Everything the Darkness Eats, and it's coming out today. By the time you see this video, it should be out right now. There is a pre-order, or there is an order link in the description, of course. This one really, it's about a lot of things, but the main narrative is really about the antagonist of the story. This man named Mr. Crowley. And Mr. Crowley is an older man in this town. He lives in the big house on the hill. He doesn't really interact much with the rest of the town folk. People say he's rich. He comes from a long lineage of people who lived in that town. But he's kind of eccentric and kind of standoffish, I guess you can say. But I'll just tell you this, he is kidnapping older residents of the town for something. And what he's doing that for is the main mystery of this book. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. We will find out at the end, though. But he's not kidnapping them with violence or with force or intimidation, because Mr. Crowley has some powers, and he can get people to do what he wants them to without resorting to violence or anything like that. Like, he gets inside their head and all of a sudden they're getting in his car, they're going to his house, they're going down into his creepy basement when they don't want to. And the thing about Mr. Crowley that I really liked is that we find out why he's doing this at the end, but we don't know much about him. We never find out his backstory, so he's kind of this mystery figure, which I think makes it a lot more creepier. Just like the original Michael Myers, I would say, when he was just out there killing people and we had no idea about his motivation, his background, why he was doing those kind of things. And that for me was the appeal of in the original Halloween movies about Michael Myers. And we don't spend the majority of time with this character in the book, even though that his story and what he's trying to do is the main arc. But there are other characters as well, including a man who lost his wife and unborn child in a horrific car accident. And ever since then, he has been in those deep, dark places of depression and sadness. And he has a voice that speaks to him. It might be his voice. It might be something else. Again, we'll find that out at the end. No spoilers. But every time he tries to better his life, to try to get over this depression, the voice tells him otherwise. He meets a woman. He wants to ask her out. And the voice tells him things like, who would want you? You're just an old, beat up man. Nobody wants you. You're not worthy. You shouldn't do this. You're going to make a fool out of yourself. And all these voices, and this voice just keeps nagging him every time he tries to do something positive, and he succumbs to it. And it's a really sad exploration about grief and how when you lose the things that are most important to you in life, how some people just can't handle it, can never seem to get over that grieving process and move on with their lives. And then there's another man. He's a Muslim, but he's also gay. And he and his husband live in this town, and they are kind of pariahs in this town because very small-minded people, very homophobic. Nobody's come over to wish them well. Nobody's come over to welcome them to the neighborhood. When they're out in public together, like grocery shopping, they get the side eye, and they know people are talking about them behind their back and making these rude homophobic comments, to the point where it starts affecting their relationship. Like, you can't determine who you are when you're born. You can't change certain things about yourself when you're born. Yet they feel maybe they should change for the sake of the people, so they don't feel so isolated and alone in this town. Which is really sad if you think about it, because nobody should have to live like that. And they are subject to increasing amounts of violence. Somebody throws a rock through their window with some homophobic slurs written around a piece of paper. That escalates to some physical violence and a home break-in, which leads to very extreme consequences when these people are confronted. And for me, the most horrifying part of this book was that story arc, because Eric LaRocca knows how to blur that line between horror and reality. Sure, he'll put a little extra emphasis on the nastier horror parts of this story, but you can see that happening in real life. You know the headlines about people being harassed because of their sexuality and because of who they were born as, and so that hits so close to home. And reality-based horror is always much more frightening because you can see it happening. You've read about it in the newspapers or seen it on the news. And somebody said once that you don't really read this novel, you kind of survive it, because the mental images that this author is going to put in your head with these situations are going to stick with you for so long. It's going to leave a scar on your brain. And so I think that was the best way to put it. You don't just read this book, you survive this book, because it is full of mystery, full of tension, full of horrors that you wouldn't normally think about. Now, in the end, all three of these characters, the man who lost his wife and child, the gay couple, and Mr. Crowley, they are all going to meet in the end. We're going to find out what's happening in this basement, why Mr. Crowley is kidnapping these people. And that ending is, oh my God, that ending is emotional, it's heartbreaking, it's horrifying, it's everything you could want when you're reading. This is, and the thing is, Eric has just such a way of writing, sprinkling these real life things that happen to people, and then putting a good old helping of horror on the whole mess to really get the hackles on the back of your neck standing up. This is a fantastic book, and it's definitely in contention for one of my favorite horror books of the year. And you definitely need to pick this one up. There is a link down below where you can order it. It's a brand new release. I encourage you to do so. Everything the Darkness Eats by Eric LaRocca. It is simply fantastic. And as always, I want to say thank you for taking some of your time, spending it here with me. I really appreciate you guys watching, as always. And until we meet again, keep reading spooky, my friends.